It's a very short incident that took place, and it raises, I think, a very important issue. The Chazal of Lublin was one of the early Hasidic masters. Chazal means seer. I don't know if you, S-E-E-R, which really is seer. He's the one who sees things. And it was rumored that he was always happy. He was always happy. Someone who found this very peculiar, very inappropriate behavior, traveled to Lublin to see him. But of course, before he reached the seer already knew what he was coming for. He said, "You're hearing that I'm happy because people observe my external behavior. But they can't see what's going on in my heart. In my heart, I'm continuously grieving over the Churban Habayis, the loss of the temple. But you appear in public. The public is a Rishus HaRabim. It's the authority of the community. And to show a face of sadness and tragedy in the public is creating a bor b'Rishus HaRabim. Now, a bor means a pit. Someone who digs a hole in the street is responsible for all the damage that it does. He has no right to dig a hole there. It's the authority of the public. If he causes damage, then he's responsible for it. So the Chazal of Lublin was comparing having a face of disappointment, unhappiness, sadness, frustration in a public area as the same as putting a pit in the street, which people are going to fall into and be damaged by. And you could ask, why is there going to be damage? Indeed, if inside he's grieving over the temple, and he thinks that's right to do, and indeed it's written in the Shulchan Aruch that you should do that, why would showing a sad and grieving face in the public, which might influence other people to do the same thing, why would that be a damage? Why would they be losing thereby? You might say they'd be gaining thereby. Yeah.
I would offer an answer. I was just going to say, because like when somebody sees your face, they psychologically, naturally, they take on that impression, So it's like when somebody sees you're sad, it's a negative thing. It's just like it passes on to other people. It's like a negative, feeling you get.
Right, but let's review. The Chazal of Lublin said, "I'm sad inside, but I don't show a sad face." Why? Because showing a sad face in public is like digging a hole in the street. When you dig a hole in the street, you're creating a danger which could injure people. If I show a sad face in public, I'm creating a danger that could injure people. Okay, now I'm asking, why is it a danger and why will they be injured by it? After all, if it is appropriate to be sad over the destruction of the temple, what will my sad face do? It will make them sad. Well, they should be sad. I'm benefiting them, not injuring them. So why is he worried about injuring people by showing a sad face? What's the mussar? What's the message in what he's saying? Now there is a statement in the Talmud which is very, very important to know and keep in mind. Kishem shemitzvah lomar davar hanishma, mitzvah shalolomar davar shalom nishma. Just as it is a mitzvah to say that which can be heard, so it is a mitzvah to not say that which cannot be heard. Why are you speaking? You're saying something in public. Why are you doing it? What do you hope to accomplish by doing it? If you know the people you're speaking to are so prejudiced, so set in their ways, so incapable of change, reconsideration, self-criticism, growth. If you know that your words are just going to make them angry, then your words are just going to make them worse. So then don't say it. Even if it's true, don't say it. Because you're not talking in the forest. You're not talking to a mirror. You're talking in public. A speech in public is a public act. It has effects on people, and you're responsible for those effects. And Chazal is saying, even if what you say is true and important and meaningful, if they can't hear you, don't say it. Sometimes people ask, why don't the leaders of the generation sound off on such and such a subject? One to answer typically is, because if they did, people wouldn't pay attention. Or they would twist it to mean something else, they would rationalize it, and it would have the opposite effect. It wouldn't really improve anybody. So, I think that's one way to understand what the Chazal Bloom was saying. If I show my sad face, people need to be lifted up. People need to be happy. People need to feel confident. Want to serve God with joy. If I present that sadness, I'm going to destroy it for them, and they'll be worse off responding to my sad face. And therefore, I can't do it. Now, I don't know what you're reading about contemporary events, what's happened the last couple of weeks. I'm not going into it in detail. I'm not even going to go into it in beremes, with a hint. But I do want to make a general comment. I remember, because I'm very old, I remember making a point to people 40 years ago. I said, then, we now are in a situation where, on any issue, the population is split into those who are for it and those who are against. To be for means to be for in every respect. If you're for A, then A has to be moral and legal, and it gives you a monetary profit, and it will lower your blood pressure, and it'll make you happy, and you'll lose weight on it. A has to be absolutely good in every respect. And if you're against A has to be bad in every respect. It has to be illegal and evil and damaging, and you'll put on weight, and you lose money, and your blood pressure will go up. Because, let's say, people are talking about A, whether it's right or wrong, and you're in a company of people who think it's bad. And you say, well, it's true that it harms your health, and it's true that it costs you money, but it will cause you to lose weight. Well, then you're not really against it. Because you think it's only some parts bad, but one part is good, then we can't trust you, because you're not really on our side. To be on our side, you've got to be against it 100% without any compromise whatsoever. Now, I'm burlesquing it because I want to make it clear, we should be all on the same page, that this is gross falsehood. This is gross falsehood. We live in a world of 1% black, 1% white, and 98% gray. And if you are going to demand absolute fidelity, if you condemn that it must be wrong in every respect, or absolute opposition, or absolute fidelity, if it's going to be right, it's going to be right in every respect, you're going to misdescribe, you're going to misunderstand 98% of what you see. And we are, in the case that occurred a couple of weeks ago, I've seen writings, I've seen responses to writings, and any nuances, any sense of maybe there's more to be said on this side, or maybe that has to be taken into account, that's weakness, that's failing to support those who need support, and it's cruel to the victims, and it's vicious, I've seen things that came from a discussion group which were just over the top. So, not only in the direct subject must you be 100% against without any sliver of compromise, but you're not allowed to talk about anything else. Because if you write about this subject, you write about something else, you're distracting attention from this subject. You're distracting attention for the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And to distract attention means you're diluting it. And if you're diluting it, you're not really against it. If you're not really against it, then you're supporting it. And then you're a cover-up. And like, this is the kind of logic that's going on. Now, under these circumstances, a person who wants to give a nuanced discussion, a nuanced description, a description that takes into account of various different aspects and features, is going to lose. No one's going to hear him. Because the population, in this case, the population, I don't think it's really split, but the people who are running the show are 100% against, in every possible respect, no distinctions allowed. So if you try to make any distinctions. Now let me give you an example of where the Torah itself is on record about something like this. In this story of Cain and Abel. They both offer sacrifices to God. Cain's sacrifice, pretty clearly in the text, is of inferior quality. God doesn't accept his sacrifice, and Cain murders his brother, kills him. I think the normal reading of that, people who aren't trained in Torah, and certainly don't look at the commentaries, aren't trained in that, Cain is black. The villain, the murderer, introducing murder into the world. What could be worse than that? And Abel is either white, as some kind of moral and spiritual hero, or he's innocent. He's just totally innocent, which means he's sort of like transparent. But it's all one story. The black side and the white or transparent side. But the text isn't like that at all. The text isn't like that at all. As a matter of fact, the text is very nuanced. First of all, they both bring sacrifices. Who brings first? Cain brings first. And then it says, V'hevel gamhu hevi. Hevel also he brought. The word also means he's an also bringer. He brought also. Meaning Cain brought first and Hevel imitated it. He's the hero. Why didn't he bring the sacrifice first? Or on his own, without an also? And then, when God refuses to accept Cain's offering, and Cain is very angry and very depressed, and if you think that psychologically it's difficult to have those two emotions at the same time, you're right, but Cain was a hero. He managed to be angry and depressed at the same time. So how does God respond? Does God kill him with a bolt of lightning from heaven? Does he condemn him? Does he tell him you're going to hell? Not at all. Not at all. God says to him, why are you angry? And why are you depressed? Isn't it true that if you improve, you'll be forgiven? That doesn't sound like condemnation to me. He's done something wrong. He's offered a sacrifice that's not worthy of being accepted. But God sees in him an ambiguous situation, and he's offering him an option of getting out of it. And yes, you're under a certain condemnation because of what you did, but you can erase it. And then he says, and if you don't improve, then your sin will be waiting for you, and your sin will be repaid, all the way till after death, if necessary. But you can rule over it, and you can correct it. So the message that Cain gets from heaven is a message of reconciliation and encouragement and an open hand to receive him. Golly, doesn't look like he's black, at least not yet. Not totally black. Okay, so you say, oh, come on, Rabbi. You stop the story in the middle. Well, in the end, he kills his brother, doesn't he? Yeah, he does kill his brother. No question about it. Then God says to Cain, where's your brother? And Cain gives the brazen, extraordinary reply, am I my brother's keeper? No, I don't know where he is. So God says to him, I know where he is, and you know where he is. You killed him. And because you killed him, I'm condemning you to suffer in certain ways. Now my friend the fanatic says, see, Rabbi? God calls him in, tells him he's a murderer, condemns him, punishes him. Finished. Black. Yeah, but God says to him, Na v'nod tihye ba'aretz. Na means in constant motion, and nod means not settling. A vagrant, a vagabond, from place to place. A few verses later, it says, Vayeshiv kayin be'eretz nod. Do you hear nod and nod is sort of the same thing? Nod and nod? Pretty close, huh? Now, he got a double condemnation. No, vinod. But he ends up in nod. Says the Medrash, God compromised with him. He said, is my sin too great to be borne? And God said, okay, I'll release half of the punishment. Is he totally black? Doesn't seem like it. If he's totally black, there's no way back. There should be no way back for him. Not only that, but one of Cain's complaints is, everyone who finds me will kill me. If I'm going to be punished the way you're setting it up, so then I'll be free game. People will kill me because they'll think of me as this enemy, this morally decrepit person. So it says, "Vayasam lo os levilti hakosos so kol motzo." God gave him a sign so that people who find him will not kill him. God's protecting him. This horrible murderer, sinner, corrupt. Yeah, but somehow he's not totally black. So, if you can say that about Cain, maybe with real people in the real world, we shouldn't have this all or nothing attitude. Now, I'm taking my life in my hands because someone's going to listen to this tape is going to come down on me in the same way. I'm hoping that people who listen to the tape on Torah anytime, be a little more judicious, a little more balanced, a little less emotionally out of control. Now let me tell you something else. Something that's even more challenging. The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva says, every person has mitzvos and transgressions. Every person. When you call a person a tzaddik, it means the majority is mitzvos. When you call a person a rasha, wicked, then the majority is transgressions. And then someone called a Beinoni who's 50-50. And then the Rambam says, a person, if he slips over the 50% line, if he's 50% minus epsilon, he has a slight majority of transgressions, miyad hu meis. He dies instantly. That's what the Rambam says. He dies instantly. So the Ravid on the spot says, I don't know what world the Rambam's living in, but in my world it doesn't work out that way. And by the way, if it occurs to you to ask, why is the Ravid so rough on the Rambam? He criticizes him freely and sometimes with condemnation. What people don't appreciate is they see the Rambam wrote this book and the Ravid wrote a commentary, so they naturally assume, which is almost always the case, that the Ravid came later than the Rambam. True. The Ravid was older than the Rambam. He was already an established Chacham when the Rambam started writing. So the Ravid's attitude was, there's this young up-and-coming, and they're circulating his Gilyanot, his scrolls. Let's see what he has to say. Let's see whether it's reasonable or isn't reasonable. That's why he's so free with his criticism. The Rambam wasn't yet the Rambam. He was Moshe ben Maimon, in his 20s, and he was writing things, in his 30s, and the Ravid was checking them out. Okay, so the Ravid says, it seems to me that lots of people who are over the 50% line, they're still walking around. The Kesef Mishnah says, the answer to the Ravid is in the continuation of the Rambam. The continuation of the Rambam says, when I said 50%, when I said majority this way, majority that way, I didn't mean by counting them up, one by one. 4,972, 4,973, no. Because mitzvos and transgressions aren't all of the same size. You're going to have one mitzvah that counts against many transgressions, And he one transgression that counts against many mitzvah. And only God can weigh up the size of a mitzvah and a transgression. Because, here's the punchline, because the size of it is not its legal weight. The size of it is the psychological weight that it has given the character and psychology of each particular agent. Rambam gives God there the title Kel Deos. Kel Deos means the one who knows the inner, mental, emotional, spiritual life of every person. So let's put Rambam's last comment together with what the Chasidic is talking about. There are these people who look evil. They look evil. We see them as evil. And the Rambam writes, Miyad Humei is going to die instantly. And we say they're not dying instantly. According to the Chasidic Mishnah, the Rambam is telling us, you can't read his heart. You can't read his heart. You don't know what's going on inside. The Rambam is not apologetic. Yes, if he had gone over the 50% line, he'd be dead. And if he isn't dead, it means he didn't go over the 50% line. He didn't. You don't see it that way? That's right. You don't see it that way. But if he hasn't died, then God sees it that way. So then, we ought to take a step back and be a little more cautious in condemning the person. Now here the crucial distinction, it says it all the time, mostly to no avail, you have to distinguish between the person and the action. You can classify an action as illegal, you can classify it as a cardinal failure, as a political failure, you can classify it on the basis of its appropriate punishment. All of that you can do. But you get moving from the action to the person, because when it comes to the person, you have to know the person's inner life, and nobody knows that. And Samuel, the prophet, is told by God, go to Yishai. One of his sons is going to be king, because Yishai is David's father. One of his sons is going to be king. So Samuel comes to Yishai and says, gather all your sons. Now there's a whole thing about it. 6 sons, 7 sons David isn't counted. I'm not going into that. All right. But he gathers his sons, and Shmuel looks at the oldest. Shmuel is very impressed. Very impressed. And in his mind, he's sure that God is going to say, that's the one. God says, you? I'm disgusted. God says this about the oldest son. I'm disgusted. And then he says to Samuel, Adam yira le'inayim, Hashem yira b'lev. Man sees with his eyes, God sees with the heart. He's talking to Samuel, the prophet. Samuel is compared to Moses and Aaron. Samuel looks at him, and in this all-or-nothing attitude, and this person committed terrible crime, against him and everything, condemn everything, and you have to be throw every brick at him, and don't have any compromise, no nuances, and so on and so on. So apparently you're superior to Samuel. Samuel made a mistake, and he's criticized for it, but you're not worried about making a mistake. A little caution, a little caution. You know? Samuel is compared to Moses and Aaron. The last third of the path that you're compared to Moses and Aaron. And he's told by God, you can't see into his eyes. You can't do that. A little caution. So, in that, one thing that you learn from Cedar is that you don't project an effect on other people if you realize that they can't take it. Now, I'm saying that about what I'm saying now. If I were talking to a large audience of people, I wouldn't say these things, because I would be sure that among the audience there are people who couldn't take it. Indeed, many years ago, I made what I think is a big mistake. We had conferences in London, or Limud. It was called Limud. What did we call it? What they called it, I forget what it was called. It was a day of lectures from people from all over the world, and it was dedicated to the study of Torah several days after. And I was invited for a few years. One year I talked about suffering of the righteous, and they put together a double session for me, like 700 people there. I spoke for an hour and a half. Long and detailed discussion of the subject. There are about 750 people there. 740 were very positive. The 10 were Holocaust survivors, and they were devastated. One of them started correspondence with the Rosh Yeshiva here. Gottlieb should be fired. He said terrible things, and so on and so on. I've never been invited back. Then the whole conference fell apart a few years later, but I've never been invited back. And I realized that if you have 10 people like that who have suffered, and they can't hear what you're saying, don't say it. Don't say it. Even if 740 people will benefit from it. So what? There are limits. I would put it into a shir, it was from my shir, and they're all recorded. If one of those 10 people happens to call up a shir and say, look, no, okay, you can deal with that. But if you know there are going to be 750 people there, and you know, you should realize there'll be some Holocaust survivors there, then you have to take it into account. So this is the same thing. Don't say something that can't be heard. But I'm telling to you, and hopefully to the people who are watching this who are coming from a more serious background, and a more self-conscious, cautious background where they're willing to reconsider their positions and grow by changing their minds, that situations are almost never black and white. Situations are gray. And your capacity to see the gray should be something that you should be worried about. Here's another example. This, I think, is just a plain mistake. But it's a mistake that's very, very widely made. Everyone knows that Rivka was pregnant with twins, so she didn't know it was twins. And when she was Yaakov and Esau, she walked past a place of Torah study. She felt the pressure in her abdomen wanted to come out. She walked past the place of idol worship. She felt the pressure of something wanted to come out. She was in distress because she thought it was a single child. And single child was equally at home in these two contexts. And she thought that the child had no principles and no backbone. Then she was told it was twins. Okay. We would read that and say, oh, of course, we see. Jacob is the tzaddik, he's the righteous one, the hero, and Esau is the criminal. Now let's figure this out. Really? Jacob is the hero and Esau is the criminal? You mean in the womb, before he was born, Esau was already a criminal? You mean God created him to be a criminal? You mean he had no free choice? You mean from birth he was condemned to be evil and to be punished for it? I don't know what religion you belong to, but that doesn't sound like my religion. People are condemned because of the free will choices that they make. So, unless you tell me that, one way out would be to say, well, of course not. We don't believe people are born evil. The people are born with free will, and they're responsible for what they do because of the choices that they make, of course. This behavior in the womb only indicates, it's like a symptom of what they will become later. Okay, that could be. So kind of like a kind of prophecy that she's having. Yeah, that's something that could be. More likely is this, that they were given different assignments, Jacob and Esau. They were given different assignments. There are two ways of affecting the world to improve it. Paul writes about this, taking from sources in the Zohar. One way is to bring holiness and purity into the world. The other way to improve the world is to rid the world of evil. So there are two different aspects of the overall project of ridding the world, of improving the world, and different people in different contexts need different aspects of this project. And this is what they were assigned to do. Jacob was assigned to bring holiness and purity into the world, and Esau was assigned to chase evil out of the world. That's why when she went past the place of idol worship, Esau wants to come out because that's his locus of operation. That's his environment. That's his challenge. Not because he's drawn to it because he's hopelessly evil as an idol worshiper. And Jacob is drawn to the base medrash because that's his locus of operation, his locus of challenge. There's a chazal that confirms this directly, that because of what Esau became, Jacob inherited Esau's place in the world to come, which means he had a place in the world to come. The place in the world to come was set aside for him. But because Esau abandoned his challenge, Jacob had to live up to both of them. And since he had to live up to both of the challenges, he got a double reward. Jacob lived with Lavan Harasha for 20 years, more than 20 years, in the face of that evil. That type of task was really given to Esau, and he abandoned it. So Jacob had to do it, and he gets a double reward there. And Esau, he didn't know what he had to do with it, and it ended up on Jacob. Gets a double loss because of that. But that means that it was up to them. So again, there's this mistake of seeing things as simplistically black and white, and the truth is, it's not black and white. I would say, with almost no exception, if you read a passage anywhere in the Tanakh that gives you an impression of black and white, you're misreading it. You're not getting it. It's not the way it's supposed to be understood. Yeah. It's a good question. I didn't work out the thought in that direction. Let's see if I can do something for it off the cuff. There are two different attitudes for it. Look, it's a little complicated. There are two different Yetzer Hara. So you thought that Yetzer Hara is a problem? Ha you got two. So suffer. I'll say two sentences about that, and I'll try to answer your question. There is a Yetzer Hara that is perverse, self-consciously, dedicatedly wicked in principle. This Yetzer Hara wants what's evil because it's evil. If you somehow manage to take what's normally evil and make it permissible, I'm not interested. This is a spirit of rebellion. I want it because you said no. I'm sure you can't imagine that. You never heard of that in human experience because you're not American. If you're American, you've heard of it, you've seen it, you know very well. An adolescent does not cut the apron strings from his parents unless he's stolen it from home and cheated on a test and ran a red light, and unless he's done everything wrong against every authority figure, he's not really an adult. This Yetzer Hara, the only possible thing to do is turn it off. Turn it off. Because there's no way of co-opting it. There's no way of incorporating it into the good side. Because the minute you make your operation a legal operation, you lose interest. This is not part of it. There are sources that say the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, in the end of days will be destroyed. Satan will be destroyed. It's that Satan we're talking about. But then there's another Yetzer Hara. Now, evil inclination, in the soft sense that this Yetzer Hara is created in such a way that it will in fact do things that are evil, but not because they're evil. This Yetzer Hara is morally and spiritually blind. So you heard me speak about that idea. It's like a bull in a china shop. When the bull is smashing the china, it's not because he wants to smash the china, not because he's broken china. just in his way. He's going, and it's very light and easy to push out of his way with his shoulder or with his tail, and he smashes things. This is usually associated with the body. The body has desires, and from the body's point of view, there's absolutely no difference whether it's permissible, whether it's a mitzvah, whether it's forbidden. It wants what it wants, and it wants it, and it will take it. Fine. Here you have a choice. Here too you could turn it off and be free for the soul to motivate you to do what needs to be done without any opposition. That's one option. The other option is to try to train this Yetzer Hara in such a way that it comes to want what's good also. Try to train it to want what's good on its own grounds. Yes, it is a higher level. Yerushalmi says the two examples here of those who did it. King David destroyed his Yetzer Hara. It says in Psalms that King David says, "Believe chalal b'kirbi, my heart is empty within me." Empty means nothing there, no residence, because he destroyed it. And by contrast, we say every morning, like Abraham, you found his heart. Now here the word heart is spelled with the letter base twice. And Chazal say that means the good inclination and the bad inclination. And you found his heart, Livavo, both sides, faithful to you. That was what Abraham did. And the Yerushalmi says King David was unable to do what Abraham did, and that's why he did what he did. So you're right. It is the higher level. Not too difficult to figure out why it's the higher level. So here too, with this Yetzer Hara, it's not all black. It's not all black. We aren't a religion that preaches living in caves and forswearing all contact with other people because of all the ways in which you could be tempted and pushed to the limit where you do things that are wrong, and that forswears all bodily pleasure because bodily pleasure is bad. No, we don't see things that way. Our goal is to elevate everything into the service of God, and that will mean putting limits, no question, but not abandoning something entirely that's, let me put it carefully now, that's part of our own character, part of our own being. The Yetzer Hara that's perverse is pictured, according to Testament, pictured as a malach, like an angel, sitting outside of you. On him you can turn your back. But to take part of what you are and destroy it, give it no expression whatsoever, because it affects you to do the wrong thing, that's not the highest resolution. The highest resolution is to incorporate it into your service of God. So there too, it's not totally black. So this all or nothing attitude, this black and white attitude, of course, when I said it 40 years ago, people weren't as aware of it, I think, as I'm a philosopher, I'm a logician, and I live on making distinctions and careful comparisons and seeing things in context and seeing the nuances of things, and it disturbed me that people were so black and white. Well, if they were black and white 40 years ago, today they're ultra black and ultra white. It's like no compromise. And an expression of such anger and such certitude, things that I saw over the top. Yeah. Good question. That's a very good question. And the answer is only when God arranges it for you. He will arrange it. There'll be times when you're confronted with evil and you'll have to deal with it. But you don't go searching for it. We don't go searching. I'm sorry, say again? Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say that if you're sitting in yeshiva, you don't see nearly as much as you see on Madison Avenue. So it's going to vary with context. And you can choose your context to a certain extent. You're certainly much better off in Des Moines, Iowa than you are in Manhattan. So it's not equal all the time and for every person. But our general counsel, what the sociologists call life wisdom, is set up your life in such a way as that doing the right thing as easy as possible. That's it. And if God wants it to happen, then He'll arrange it. I'll give you one example of this, which is it's a direct application of what you're saying. When you do tshuva for a crime, the Rambam defines tshuva gemura, tshuva as being in exactly the same situation in which you failed, and this time succeeding because you want to do tshuva, because you want to do God's will. So the natural question to ask is, well, if I want to do the top job, if I want to do the best possible tshuva, it sounds like I should put myself in the situation where I was last time, and this time I should succeed. But the example that the Rambam gives, quoting the Mishnah in Yuma, is an example of a sexual crime. Almost always, you commit a sexual crime private. You don't advertise it, don't do it on the street. And let's say it was adultery. Well, it's forbidden by the Torah to be alone with somebody else's wife. That's forbidden. So if you're going to follow your intuition and say, I have to do tshuva, I have to do the best possible tshuva, best possible tshuva is being in the same circumstances that it was in before, that means I got to be alone with this guy's wife again, but that's forbidden. Then the message is, don't do it. Don't do it. So you say, well, if I don't do it, then the door of complete tshuva is closed to me. And the answer is, right, it's closed to you. If God wants you to do complete tshuva, He'll arrange it. You're going up to the local elevator in the 80-store building. It's going to take you 12 minutes to get to your destination on the 78th floor. You're reading the Wall Street Journal, not the New York Times. You're reading the Wall Street Journal. You're hiding behind the paper. People getting on, people getting off. You see it's up to 60. Okay, 3 minutes, I'll be there. People are getting off. All of a sudden, there's a crunch, and the elevator stops between floors. What's wrong? The elevator seems to be broken. Gosh, I guess I'm the only one here. And then you catch sight of her standing behind you, and it's that guy's wife. And you're all over. If God wants to arrange it, He'll arrange it. And then you'll have your opportunity to prove yourself with tshuva gemura, with the complete tshuva, but you don't look for it. Esau was going to be put in a position where he would be confronted with evil. That's why he became a hunter. That's why he was not in the base measure. He wasn't in the context of learning like Jacob was. The people around him are all idol worshippers. He's going to be surrounded by idol worshippers. So that's where he's got to operate in his context and to work on eradicating the evil. That was his assignment. He just failed at it, so he got taken over by the evil. So I think the answer there is it all depends upon your capabilities. There is a Gemara which says, "Al tistakel b'fnei rasha." Don't look into the eyes of an evil person. So I asked my Rebbe Zatzal about it, and he said, when you look someone in the eyes, that sets up a struggle. Don't go in unless you're sure you're going to win. I know of cases where great people were offered the opportunity to meet with so-and-so, I'm going to use names now, and they avoided the meeting, and they said later, because he is a person with great powers, and I couldn't be sure I was going to win. And under those conditions, you're not required to put yourself in danger. If indeed you are sure you will win, you're sure that you can handle it, then, and you can actually create an improvement, then of course you should do it. He was enormously strong. And later kings, who were also tzaddikim, who were weaker, refused to do the battles that he did. They refused to do it. So they said, I will lose the spiritual struggle. There's a medrash about that, but that's the quotes. But they'll lose the spiritual struggle. So you come to Chizkiyahu, who said, I can't do anything. I can't go out and paddle. I can't chase them. I can't pray for success. I just go to sleep and let God take care of the whole thing. Because if I do anything and there's a victory, I'm going to take credit for it. And if I take credit for it, I'm ruining my spirituality. So that being the case, what I have to do is just go home and go to sleep. And that's what he did. And God took care of it. So that's the idea of, don't enter the struggle, this kind of struggle. Okay, that's today's contribution.